The alarm bells rang through the mining station like angry thunder. Captain Hana Kim pressed her palm against the cold metal wall and felt the vibrations shake through her bones. 3 years of commanding the deep space mining operation had taught her to read these tremors like a language. This one spoke of trouble. "Dae-won, get to your ship," she called across the command center. "We have visitors again." The man sitting at the pilot console turned his head toward her voice. His eyes were clouded white from the mining accident that had stolen his sight, but his hands moved across the controls with perfect precision. Everyone called him Falcon, though Hana never understood why until she saw him fly. "How many this time, Captain?" Dae-won asked, his fingers dancing over the instrument panel. The ship computer spoke to him in soft beeps and electronic whispers that he understood better than most people understood speech. "Scanner shows 6 Vorthak interceptors coming in fast," reported So-hee from her engineering station. Her voice carried that edge it always had when the alien raiders appeared. "Same as last week, they want to test us again." Hana watched the dots on her screen grow larger. The Vorthak had been coming more often lately. At first, they sent 1 or 2 ships to harass the mining crews. Then it became weekly raids. Now they came every few days, each time with more ships and bigger weapons. The aliens looked down on humans as scavengers and thieves. They believed this section of space belonged to their empire, even though human surveys had found it first. The mining station orbited a gas giant rich in rare elements that both species needed, but the Vorthak thought might made right, and they had bigger guns. "Jinho, what does intelligence say about their movement patterns?" Hana asked the young officer at the communications desk. "They are getting bolder, Captain. Our sources say they might be planning something bigger than raids. Soon." Jinho's fingers moved across his keyboard as he pulled up the latest reports. "The Vorthak Military Council has been meeting more often. They do not like us being here." Dae-won stood up from his console and stretched his arms. 3 years ago, he had been the best pilot on the station. Then a mining laser malfunctioned during a routine operation, and the flash of light burned his eyes beyond repair. The doctors said he would never fly again. The company wanted to send him home to Earth, on disability pay. But Dae-won refused to give up. He spent months learning to fly by sound and touch alone. He memorized every vibration his ship made, every electronic tone from the instruments. He learned to feel the pull of gravity and the push of engine thrust in ways that sighted pilots never could. Hana had been the only captain willing to give him a chance. That first test flight had been terrifying. Dae-won took his modified fighter through an asteroid field using only sensor data and instinct. He moved through the rocks like he was dancing, never hitting anything, never even coming close. That was when she started calling him her Falcon, the bird of prey that could hunt in complete darkness. "Falcon, I need you to keep them busy while we finish loading the ore transport," Hana said. "Can you handle 6 ships alone?" Dae-won smiled, and for a moment, the years seemed to fall away from his scarred face. "Captain, you know I fly better when I cannot see them coming. Their formations are too predictable anyway." He walked toward the hangar bay with the confidence of a man who knew every inch of the station. His ship waited for him there, a modified fighter that looked like nothing special from the outside. But Hana had watched the engineers work on it for months. They had replaced every visual display with audio signals. They had added vibration pads to the pilot seat so Dae-won could feel what the ship was doing. They had turned a normal fighter into something that could be flown by touch and sound alone. The Vorthak ships appeared on the edge of scanner range, moving in their usual attack formation. Hana had seen it dozens of times before. They would sweep in fast, fire at the mining equipment, and then retreat when human fighters responded. It was meant to intimidate and disrupt operations, but today felt different. The alien ships were moving slower, more carefully. They were scanning the station with deep sensors instead of just harassing the outer defenses. "Captain," Yu-jin called, from the navigation station. "The transport ship is only half loaded. We need at least 20 more minutes to finish." 20 minutes was a long time to hold off 6 Vorthak interceptors. Their ships were faster and better armed than anything the mining station had. The only advantage humans possessed was pilots like Dae-won who could do impossible things. Hana opened the communication channel to the hangar bay. Falcon, you have 20 minutes. Do not take any unnecessary risks. When do I ever take unnecessary risks? Daewon replied, and she could hear the smile in his voice. His ship launched from the bay like a silver arrow. Hana watched it on her screens as it accelerated toward the approaching Vorthak formation. The alien ships immediately changed course to intercept. They probably thought this would be easy. One human fighter against 6 of their best. They had no idea what they were about to face. Daewon's ship moved through space like it was alive. It rolled and turned and spun in ways that should not have been possible. The Vorthak fired their weapons, but he was never where they expected him to be. He flowed around their attacks like water around stones. How does he do that? So he whispered, watching the tactical display. Hana had asked herself the same question many times. She thought it might be because Daewon did not rely on his eyes, like other pilots. He felt his ship instead of seeing it. He listened to space instead of looking at it. Somehow, that made him better at reading what the enemy would do next. The dance continued for 15 minutes. 6 Vorthak ships chasing, 1 human fighter through the darkness between worlds. Sometimes they got close enough to nearly hit him, but Daewon always slipped away at the last second, leading them further from the mining station. Finally, the alien ships gave up and retreated toward their own territory. They had accomplished nothing except wasting fuel and ammunition. Human mining operation continued without interruption. Daewon's ship returned to the hangar bay as smoothly as it had left. Hana met him there as he climbed out of the cockpit. "Show off," she said. "Just doing my job, Captain," he replied. But his hands were shaking slightly as he removed his flight helmet. Even for the best pilot, facing 6 enemy ships alone was never easy. Hana looked at this man who had refused to let blindness end his career. 3 years ago, she had taken a chance on him when no one else would. Now she could not imagine running operations without him. The bond between them had been forged in countless dangerous situations like this one. She was his eyes when he needed to see beyond his instruments. He was her wings when diplomacy failed, and only speed could save them. Neither of them knew that bond would soon be tested in ways they could never imagine. The emergency meeting started at dawn shift. Hana Kim sat at the head of the conference table, looking at the faces around her. So he had dark circles under her eyes from working all night on the scanner reports. Jin Ho kept checking his communication devices for updates from intelligence sources. Yujin spread navigation charts across the metal table like a fortune teller reading bad omens. "Tell me what we know," Hana said quietly. So he activated the holographic display above the table. Dozens of red dots appeared in the empty space between star systems. Each dot represented a Vorthak warship moving toward their sector. "I picked up massive fleet movement starting 3 days ago," so he said. "At first I thought it was just normal patrol rotation, but the numbers keep growing. I count at least 40 ships now, maybe more." Jin Ho leaned forward in his chair. "My contacts in the border colonies confirm it. The Vorthak are pulling ships from 3 different sectors. This is not a raid or harassment mission." "What kind of ships?" asked Yujin, studying the tactical display. "Heavy cruisers, battleships, and a full carrier with fighter squadrons," so he replied, "plus support vessels and troop transports. This is an invasion fleet." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. The mining station had defensive platforms and a small squadron of fighters, but nothing that could stand against a fleet of that size. The 3,000 workers and their families living on the station would be completely helpless. Hana felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. She had commanded mining operations for 7 years, but always in peaceful territory. The worst threats had been equipment failures and minor pirate raids. This was something entirely different. "Do we know their target?" she asked. "Intelligence thinks they are coming for us," Jin Ho said. His voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly as he pulled up more reports. "The Vorthak Military Council has been discussing what they call the human infestation problem. They want to clear us out of this entire region." Daewon entered the conference room as Jin Ho was speaking. His white eyes turned toward the sound of voices, and he found an empty chair by touch. Hana had called him in because she valued his opinion on tactical matters. Sometimes a pilot's perspective revealed things that ground commanders missed. How long do we have? Hana asked. Based on their current speed, maybe 18 hours before the advanced scouts arrive. So he answered. The main fleet will be here 6 hours after that. Hana did quick calculations in her head. The evacuation ships could carry about 800 people each. They had 4 ships available, but it would take multiple trips to move everyone to safety. Even working perfectly, the evacuation would take at least 12 hours. We need to start evacuating immediately, Yujin said. Get the families and non-essential personnel out first. Where can they go that will be safe? Asked Sohee. The nearest human colony is 2 days away at maximum speed. If the Vorthak really want to clear this region, nowhere will be safe. Hana stared at the holographic display showing the approaching fleet. 40 warships against a mining station with basic defenses. It was not even a fair fight. It was an execution. They will send fast interceptors ahead of the main fleet, Daiwan said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. Standard Vorthak tactics. The interceptors will try to prevent evacuations while the heavy ships move into position. How? Many interceptors? Hana asked. Usually 12 to 15 ships. Fast, heavily armed, designed to hunt down fleeing vessels. Daiwan's fingers tapped against the table as he thought. They will spread out in a wide net around the system. Any evacuation ship that tries to leave will be destroyed. The weight in Hana's stomach grew heavier. Even if they started evacuating, immediately the Vorthak interceptors would arrive before the evacuation was complete. The fleeing ships would be sitting targets. What if we fight? Sohee asked. We have defensive platforms and a fighter squadron. Jinho shook his head. Our fighters are designed for mining support and light patrol duties. The defensive platforms are meant to stop pirates, not a battle fleet. We would be destroyed in minutes. So what are our options? Yujin asked. We cannot evacuate because of the interceptors. We cannot fight because we are outgunned. What else is there? Hana looked around the table at her senior staff. These people had served with her for years. They had families on the station, friends, entire lives built around this remote outpost. Now she had to find a way to save them all with no good options. What? If someone leads the interceptors away? Daiwan asked. Draw them off so the evacuation ships can escape? 1 fighter against 12 interceptors? So he said. That would be suicide. Maybe, Daiwan replied. But if that 1 fighter was fast enough and clever enough, it might work. Keep them busy long enough for the evacuation to succeed. Hana understood what he was suggesting. She had seen Daiwan outfly 6 Vorthak ships just days before. But 12 interceptors would be different. They would be hunting specifically for him, using coordinated tactics designed to trap and destroy fast targets. It is too dangerous, she said. I will not ask anyone to take that kind of risk. You are not asking, Daiwan said with a slight smile. I am volunteering. Daiwan, no. We need to find another way. Captain, you know there is no other way. Someone has to buy time for the evacuation. I am the best pilot we have for this kind of mission. Hana wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. His modified fighter was the fastest ship on the station. His ability to fly by instinct and feel made him unpredictable in ways that normal pilots could not match. If anyone could lead a dozen interceptors on a wild chase through space, it would be Daiwan. But the odds were still terrible. Even the best pilot could not outrun that many enemies forever. The interceptors will be faster than your fighter, Yujin pointed out. How do you plan to stay ahead of them? I do not need to stay ahead forever, Daiwan said. Just long enough. Maybe I can lead them into the asteroid field near the gas giant. The electromagnetic storms there will interfere with their sensors, level the playing field a little. So he brought up navigational charts of the local system. The asteroid field, he mentioned, was a maze of rocks and debris orbiting close to the gas giant. The massive planet's magnetic field created storms of energy that could blind sensors and disrupt communications. It was dangerous territory that most pilots avoided. That field has destroyed more ships than pirates have, so he warned. The electromagnetic interference makes navigation almost impossible. For pilots who rely on their eyes and instruments, yes, Daiwan said. But I learned to fly in conditions like that. Might actually give me an advantage. Hana studied the tactical situation from every angle she could think of. 12 Vorthak interceptors versus 1 human fighter in an electromagnetic storm zone. The odds were still terrible, but at least there was a chance. How long would you need to keep them occupied, she asked. Give me 4 hours, Yujin answered. 4 hours and I can get all the evacuation ships loaded and away from the station. 4 hours. Daewon would have to survive for 4 hours while being hunted by 12 enemy ships in one of the most dangerous regions of local space. Hana looked at the man who had been her most trusted pilot for 3 years. He sat calmly in his chair, already mentally preparing for a mission that would probably kill him. She wanted to forbid it, to find some other solution that did not require this kind of sacrifice. But deep down, she knew there was no other choice. The Vorthak fleet was coming, whether they were ready or not. Someone had to make the hard decisions. All right, she said finally. We start evacuating in 1 hour. Daewon, get your ship ready. As the meeting broke up, Hana remained sitting at the table. In 18 hours, the Vorthak fleet would arrive to find an empty mining station. If everything went according to plan, 3,000 people would be safely away from the battle zone. The plan depended entirely on one blind pilot and his ability to dance with death among the stars. The hangar bay buzzed with activity as evacuation ships prepared for launch. Families carried bags and children toward the loading ramps while crew members secured equipment and supplies. The air smelled of fuel and fear and desperate hope. Daewon stood beside his fighter, running his hands along the hull like he was saying goodbye to an old friend. The ship had been his companion for 3 years, modified to respond to his every touch and sound. Today it would either save 3,000 lives or become his tomb among the stars. Pre-flight checks are complete, so he reported through his headset. All systems running perfectly. I made some adjustments to your sensor package. Should give you better range in the electromagnetic field. Thank you, Daewon said. He climbed into the cockpit and settled into the pilot seat. The familiar vibrations of the ship's systems hummed through his body. Every engine tone, every electronic beep, spoke to him in a language he understood better than words. Hana's voice came through the communication system. Falcon, the first wave of interceptors just appeared on long-range scanners. 12 ships, just like you predicted. They will be in weapons range in 30 minutes. Copy that, Captain. Beginning launch. Sequence now. Daewon's hands moved across the controls with practiced ease. The fighter's engines came alive with a deep rumble that he felt in his bones. The hangar bay doors opened to reveal the starfield beyond, beautiful and deadly in the cold light of distant suns. First evacuation ship is ready for departure, Yujin reported from the command center. 800 passengers aboard, mostly families with children. Launch when I give the signal, Hana ordered. Falcon, you need to draw those interceptors away before our people try to run. Daewon smiled as his fighter cleared the hangar bay. The familiar sensation of free flight filled his chest with something that might have been joy if the situation were not so desperate. Out here in the darkness, surrounded by nothing but vacuum and stars, he felt more at home than anywhere else. The Vorthak interceptors appeared on his tactical display as 12 red dots moving in perfect formation. They were still 20 minutes away, but closing fast. These were not the casual raiders that had been harassing the mining station. These were military hunters, trained to kill anything that tried to escape their net. I have visual contact with the enemy ships, reported Jin Ho from his communication station. They are spreading out into search formation. Looks like they plan to surround the entire system. Not if I can help it, Daewon muttered. He pushed his fighter toward maximum speed, heading directly for the center of the Vorthak formation. His ship screamed through space like a silver arrow, aimed at the heart of the enemy fleet. The Vorthak ships immediately changed course to intercept him. Daewon could feel their targeting systems trying to lock onto his fighter through the electronic warfare equipment so he had installed. But his ship was small and fast and harder to hit than the aliens expected. Contact in 60 seconds, he reported. Beginning evasive maneuvers now. The dance began as the first Vorthak interceptor opened fire. Daewon felt the energy weapons discharge through his ship's sensors and rolled away from the incoming fire. The alien pilot was good, but he relied too much on his eyes and targeting computers. Daewon flew by instinct and feel. He sensed where the enemy ship would fire before the pilot even knew it himself. The Vorthak weapons missed by meters as his fighter spun through a series of impossible turns. 2 more interceptors joined the attack. Then 4. Then all 12 ships were firing at once, filling space with deadly energy beams. But Daewon was never where they expected him to be. He flowed between their attacks like smoke in the wind. Incredible, breathed Sohee, watching the tactical display. How is he doing that? Hana watched the screen with her heart in her throat. 12 enemy ships chasing 1 human fighter through the darkness. Every few seconds, the aliens came close, enough to destroy him, but somehow Daewon always slipped away at the last moment. First evacuation ship is away, Yujin reported. Clean escape. The interceptors are too busy chasing Falcon to notice. Good. Prepare the second ship for launch. The chase continued for 20 minutes. Daewon led the Vorthak interceptors further and further from the mining station, drawing them toward the gas giant and its dangerous asteroid field. His fighter took several hits from glancing energy beams, but the damage was not critical. Hull, temperature rising, he reported, feeling the heat through his ship's sensors. Minor damage to the port engine, still flying normally. The Vorthak ships were getting frustrated. They had expected to destroy 1 human fighter in minutes, not chase it across the system in a deadly game of tag. Their formation began to spread out as individual pilots tried to anticipate where their target would go next. That was exactly what Daewon had been waiting for. Spread out ships could not support each other as effectively. He began to pick them off one by one, using their own formation against them. Second evacuation ship launching now, Hana announced. You are doing great, Falcon. Keep them busy for 2 more hours. 2 more hours. Daewon felt exhaustion creeping into his muscles from the constant high-speed maneuvering. His ship was running hot and several systems were showing stress warnings. But 3,000 lives depended on him staying alive and keeping the enemy occupied. He led the remaining interceptors into the outer edge of the asteroid field. The massive rocks floating in space provided cover and obstacles that he could use to his advantage. The electromagnetic storms from the gas giant began to interfere with sensors and communications. I am losing contact with you, Falcon, Hana said, her voice breaking up with static. The electromagnetic interference is too strong. Copy that, Captain. Continuing the mission. Now Daewon was truly alone. No voice from the command center, no tactical updates, no support except his own skill and the ship that had become part of his body. The Vorthak interceptors followed him deeper into the asteroid field, their formation becoming more ragged as the electromagnetic storms played havoc with their instruments. But the storms affected his ship too. Several times he nearly flew into asteroids that his sensors failed to detect through the interference. The constant maneuvering in the unstable electromagnetic field was like trying to fly through a hurricane while blindfolded, except he was already blind, and somehow that made all the difference. Where the Vorthak pilot struggled with sensor ghosts and false readings, Daewon relied on instincts that had been sharpened by 3 years of flying without sight. He felt the gravitational pull of nearby asteroids through his ship's hull. He sensed the electromagnetic eddies that could trap or destroy unwary pilots. One by one, the Vorthak interceptors made mistakes. One flew too close to a large asteroid and was crushed by shifting debris. Another got caught in an electromagnetic vortex and lost power to his engines. A third tried to follow Daewon through a gap between rocks that was too narrow for the larger alien ship. Third evacuation ship away safely, came Hana's voice through a brief gap in the interference. 1 more to go. Hold on, Falcon. Daewon was down to his last reserves of energy and endurance. His ship had taken multiple hits and was running on backup power for several systems. But only 6 Vorthak interceptors remained, and they were as battered as he was. The final phase of the chase took them deep into the heart of the electromagnetic storm. Here the gas giant's magnetic field was so strong that it created visible auroras in the thin atmosphere of the larger asteroids. Beautiful and deadly patterns of light danced through space around them. Dai-Wan used every trick he had learned in 3 years of impossible flying. He dove between asteroids, rolled around electromagnetic pillars, and turned the storm itself into a weapon against his pursuers. The Vorthak pilots, trained for normal space combat, could not adapt to these chaotic conditions. When the fourth and final evacuation ship launched from the mining station, only 3 enemy interceptors were still operational. They had been chasing one human fighter for nearly 4 hours through the most dangerous region of local space. All evacuations complete, Hana's voice crackled through the static. All our people are safe. You did it, Falcon. You can come home, now. But as Dai-Wan turned his battered fighter toward the mining station, he saw something on his sensors that made his blood run cold. The main Vorthak fleet had arrived early. 40 warships were moving into position around the station. They were not going to let him come home. The command center shook as Vorthak battleships opened fire on the mining station. Hana Kim grabbed the edge of her command console as emergency lights flashed red throughout the room. The massive alien fleet had arrived 2 hours early, and now 40 warships surrounded the station like predators circling wounded prey. Shields are down to 60%, so he reported, her voice tight with fear. The defensive platforms are not designed for this level of bombardment. We cannot hold out much longer. Hana felt warm liquid running down her side and looked down, to see blood soaking through her uniform. A piece of metal from the ceiling had struck her during the first barrage, but she had been too focused on the battle to notice the wound. Captain, you need medical attention, Yujin said, seeing the blood. Later, Hana replied, though she could feel her strength slowly draining away. What is the status of our people? All evacuation ships are away safely, Jin Ho reported from Mei, his communication station. They are 3 hours out from the nearest colony. The Vorthak fleet cannot catch them now. That was something at least. 3,000 innocent people were safe, including families and children who had never asked to be part of this war. Whatever happened to the mining station now, the evacuation had been a success. Another explosion rocked the command center as Vorthak energy weapons struck the station's outer hull. Hana steadied herself against the console and tried to ignore the growing pain in her chest. Something inside her had been damaged worse than she wanted to admit. Where is Dai-Wan? She asked. Still in the asteroid field, so he answered, checking her sensors. 3 enemy interceptors are still chasing him. The electromagnetic interference makes it hard to track his exact position. Hana opened the communication channel, hoping to reach her pilot through the static and interference. Falcon, can you hear me? The main fleet is here. You need to get out of there. Static filled the speakers for several seconds. Then Dai-Wan's voice came through, faint but clear. I hear you. Captain, my ship is badly damaged. I do not think I can make it back to the station. Try anyway. We will find a way to get you out. Captain, Dai-Wan said, and something in his voice made her heart clench with fear. I can see the Vorthak fleet on my sensors. 40 ships against 1 mining station. You cannot win this fight, Wikiao. Do not have to win. We just have to survive long enough for help to arrive. Help from where? The nearest human military base is 6 days away. You have maybe 6 hours before the station is destroyed. Hana knew he was right. The defensive platforms were already failing under the massive bombardment. The station's hull was breached in dozens of places. Soon the life support systems would fail, and anyone still aboard would die in the cold vacuum of space. There has to be something we can do, she said. The command center shook again as another section of the station took a direct hit. Warning alarms screamed from every console. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut to contain the damage, but Hana could hear the groaning of metal under stress throughout the structure. Internal bleeding detected. The medical scanner announced as Su Min, the station's doctor, ran a quick examination. Captain, you need surgery immediately. The shrapnel punctured something vital. Hana pushed the doctor away weakly. Not now. I need to coordinate the defense. But even as she spoke, she could feel her body shutting down. The blood loss was too severe. and whatever had been damaged inside her chest was getting worse by the minute. Her vision began to blur at the edges. "Captain," Eugene said urgently, "the Vorthak Admiral is hailing us. He wants to talk." "Put him through." The main screen flickered to life, showing the scaled face of Admiral Krexeth. His yellow eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he looked at the damaged human command center. When he spoke, his voice carried the arrogant tone of a predator playing with wounded prey. "Human Commander, your defensive capabilities are pathetic. Surrender now, and I will make your deaths quick." "Go to hell," Hana replied, though the effort of speaking made her chest burn with pain. "Your species is a disease that spreads through space like vermin. Today we begin the cure. After we finish with this station, we will hunt down your evacuation ships and destroy them as well." The communication cut off and the bombardment resumed with even greater intensity. Hana realized that the Vorthak had been toying with them before, using only a fraction of their firepower. Now they were serious about ending the battle quickly. "Falcon," she called over the communication system. "Are you still there?" "Still. Here, Captain. Still being chased by 3 very angry aliens." "Listen to me carefully. The Admiral says they are going to hunt down our evacuation ships after they finish here. Our people are not safe yet." "What do you want me to do about it?" "My ship can barely fly and I am outnumbered 40-1. Hana felt her heartbeat becoming irregular as her body struggled to compensate for the blood loss. The medical scanner was showing critical readings across the board, but she ignored it. There had to be something they could do, some way to stop the Vorthak fleet, or at least delay them long enough for the evacuation ships to reach safety. "The gas giant," she said suddenly. "What if you could cause some kind of explosion in the upper atmosphere? Create enough interference to blind their sensors?" "Captain, that is impossible. It would take a massive energy discharge to affect something that size." "What about your ship's reactor? If you overloaded it in the right place?" There was a long pause before Daewon answered. "That would be a one-way trip. The explosion would destroy my ship and everything within 1,000 kilometers. But would it work? Would it create enough electromagnetic disruption to interfere with their fleet operations?" Another pause. "Maybe. The gas giant's magnetic field would amplify the effect. It might blind their sensors for several hours." Hana felt her strength fading rapidly. The edges of her vision were going dark and her hands could barely maintain their grip on the console. But her mind was still working, still calculating the odds and possibilities. "Do it," she whispered. "Captain, no. There has to be another way. There is no other way. You said it yourself, we cannot win this fight, but maybe we can give our people time to escape." The command center shook again as more Vorthak weapons struck the station. Through the observation windows, Hana could see pieces of the outer hull breaking away and floating into space. The mining station was dying around them. "I cannot ask you to do this," she said to Daewon. "You are not asking. I am choosing." Hana tried to stand, but her legs would not support her weight. Su Min caught her as she fell and helped her back into the command chair. The doctor's face was grave as she checked the medical readings. "Captain, you are dying. The internal bleeding is too severe. We need to get you to surgery now." "No time," Hana gasped. "The battle is not over." But even as she spoke, she knew her body was shutting down. Her heart was beating irregularly, struggling to pump what little blood remained. The wound in her chest felt like fire, and every breath was an effort. "Falcon," she called weakly over the communication system. "Whatever happens, I want you to know that serving with you has been the greatest honor of my career. You are the finest pilot I have ever known." "Captain, do not talk like that. You are going to be fine." "No, I am not, and that is okay. We saved our people. 3,000 lives are safe because of what we did here today." Hana felt her consciousness slipping away as her heart began to fail. With her last breath, she spoke the words that would define everything that followed. "Fly with fire, my Falcon. Show them what humans are made of." The communication system went silent. In the command center of the dying mining station, Captain Hana Kim closed her eyes for the last time. Her heart stopped beating as the battle raged around her. But in the electromagnetic storms of the gas giant, Something extraordinary was about to begin. The silence that followed Hana's last words was deeper than the vacuum of space itself. Dai-Wan sat in his damaged fighter, surrounded by the swirling colors of the electromagnetic storm, and felt something break inside his chest that had nothing to do with physical wounds. For 3 years her voice had been his anchor in the darkness. She had been his eyes when sensors failed, his compass when navigation systems died, his reason for pushing beyond every limitation that blindness had tried to impose. Now that voice was gone forever, and he was truly alone among the stars. But with that terrible silence came something else, a fire that started in his heart and spread through his entire body like liquid flame. The grief transformed into something pure and dangerous, something that the 3 Vorthak interceptors still chasing him could not possibly understand. Dai-Wan had always been an excellent pilot. Now he became something more. His hands moved across, the controls with movements that seemed to flow like water. The damaged fighter responded as if it had become part of his body, an extension of his will rather than a machine he was operating. The electromagnetic storms that had been hampering his sensors suddenly felt like old friends whispering secrets in his ear. The first Vorthak interceptor died so quickly that its pilot never knew what happened. One moment he was chasing a damaged, human fighter through the asteroid field. The next moment his ship was torn apart by weapons fire that came from impossible angles. The second interceptor tried to retreat, but retreat was no longer an option. Dai-Wan's fighter moved through space like a hunting cat, graceful and deadly and absolutely relentless. The alien pilot fired everything he had, but the human ship was never where the weapons expected it to be. The third interceptor lasted longer, but only because its pilot was smart enough to recognize that he was no longer hunting prey. He was being hunted by something that fought like the storms themselves, wild and unpredictable, and utterly without mercy. When the last enemy ship exploded in a ball of fire and debris, Dai-Wan felt no satisfaction. The rage and grief that drove him needed a larger target, something worthy of the woman whose death had awakened this fire in his soul. He turned his fighter toward the gas giant where the Vorthak fleet waited in formation around the dying mining station. 40 warships against 1 damaged human fighter. It should have been laughable. Instead, it felt like destiny. The main Vorthak fleet was finishing its destruction of the mining station when their sensors detected the approaching human ship. Admiral Krext looked at the tactical display with mild interest. 1 fighter against 40 ships was barely worth noticing. "Destroy it," he ordered casually. 6 Vorthak cruisers turned their weapons toward the approaching fighter. Energy beams that could destroy buildings lanced through space, converging on the tiny human ship. But the ship was not there when the beams arrived. Dai-Wan flew his fighter into the heart of the enemy fleet like he was dancing with death itself. The massive warships fired everything they had, but he flowed between their attacks like smoke in the wind. Every weapon that targeted him struck empty space or hit other Vorthak ships by mistake. The blind human pilot had learned to read space itself. He felt the gravitational eddies created by the massive ships, sensed the energy signatures of charging weapons before they fired, anticipated the movements of enemy captains before they gave their orders. The electromagnetic storms from the gas giant sang to him in frequencies that sighted pilots could never hear. Admiral Krexith watched in growing disbelief as his fleet tried to destroy 1 human fighter. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were firing wildly at a target they could not hit. Some of his cruisers had already taken damage from friendly fire as they tried to track the impossible movements of their enemy. "What is that pilot doing?" demanded his tactical officer. "I do not know," Krexth replied. "But kill it now." The Vorthak fleet concentrated their fire, creating a web of energy beams that should have been impossible to escape. But Dai-Wan did not try to escape. Instead, he flew directly through the center of the killing field, his ship spinning and rolling in patterns that defied understanding. 3 Vorthak cruisers exploded, as the human fighter somehow turned their own weapons against them. A 4th ship lost power when its reactor overloaded trying to track movements that violated every principle of space combat. A 5th ship collided with an asteroid when its pilot became disoriented trying to follow the impossible dance of his target. "This is not possible," Krext said, his voice tight with fear. No pilot can fly like that. No human should be able to do what we are seeing. But Daewon was no longer simply flying. He had become something else, something that existed in perfect harmony with the chaos of the electromagnetic storm. The fire that Hana's death had lit in his heart burned away every limitation, every doubt, every fear that had ever held him back. He was the Falcon she had named him, hunting in darkness with senses that transcended sight. He was the storm itself, wild and beautiful and utterly unstoppable. The battle continued for 2 hours. When it ended, 23 Vorthak warships had been destroyed or disabled. The survivors fled toward their own territory, carrying tales of a human pilot who fought like the gods of war themselves. Admiral Krex escaped in one of the remaining ships, but he was forever changed by what he had witnessed. In his official report, he wrote words that would echo through Vorthak military academies for generations. We fought not against technology or superior numbers, but against something our doctrine cannot quantify. The humans possess a power that emerges from their emotional bonds, a strength that grows stronger when they fight for those they love. We cannot defeat this with weapons alone. Daewon's fighter finally came to rest in the shadow of the gas giant, its engines silent and its hull scarred by battle. He sat in the cockpit and felt the fire in his heart slowly fade to embers. The rage that had carried him through the impossible fight was gone, replaced by a deep exhaustion that seemed to reach into his very soul. But the evacuation ships were safe. 3,000 people would live to see their families again because of what had happened here. Hana's sacrifice had not been in vain. Search and rescue ships from the nearest human colony arrived 6 hours later. They found Daewon unconscious in his fighter, still alive but barely. The medical teams worked for hours to save him, and when he finally woke up in the hospital, the first thing he asked about was Captain Hana Kim. They told him gently that she had died during the battle, her heart stopping just as the mining station's life support finally failed. But they also told him about the memorial wall they were building, where her final words would be inscribed for future generations to remember. Some bonds transcend death, and some flights transcend sight. When love gives wings to determination, even darkness cannot ground the human spirit. Years later, when children asked about the Battle of the Gas Giant, old pilots would tell them about the blind Falcon who flew with fire when his captain's heart stopped beating. They would speak of impossible maneuvers and impossible courage, of one man who became a legend when grief transformed into something beautiful and terrible. And sometimes, on quiet nights when the stars seemed especially bright, those same pilots would look up at the sky and wonder if somewhere among those distant lights, a captain and her Falcon were still flying together through the endless dark, their bond unbroken by death itself. The Vorthak Empire never again tried to remove humans from that sector of space. Some victories, they learned, are worth more than territory. Some stories, once told, change the way entire civilizations see themselves and their enemies. The Falcon had been blind, but it had flown with fire, and in flying, it had shown the galaxy what it truly meant to be human.